I am Evelyn Prescott, 29 years old, and a forensic accountant. Growing up in a powerful family meant immense expectations and unbreakable traditions. This year had been especially difficult since I questioned the integrity of my father's firm, Prescott Capital, and was cast out for it. As I arrived at my parents' sprawling estate, clutching a bottle of their favorite wine, they met me at the grand entrance. Their faces, like stone. "You are not invited." My father, Kevin, said, his voice as cold as the November air. Through the gap between them, I could see the warm glow of the dining room. My sister, Jessica, was laughing. My uncle Christopher was raising a glass. And my best friend, Megan, was sitting in my seat at the table. My mother, Kimberly, simply looked through me, her expression a mask of disappointment. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit that like button and subscribe. Because one single phone call was about to change everything. The Prescott estate, where I grew up, was the perfect symbol of my family, immaculate, imposing, and built on a foundation of secrets. My father founded Prescott Capital 30 years ago, building it into a financial empire. In our family, success wasn't just encouraged, it was the only currency that mattered. My mother's entire life was dedicated to upholding our pristine public image. She ran charity galas, hosted flawless dinners, and ensured her daughters were perfect accessories to the Prescott legacy. A Prescott never shows weakness, she would say. Any time Jessica or I showed a hint of emotion, she deemed inappropriate. My older sister, Jessica, was the golden child. She joined the firm right after business school and never once questioned our father's methods. I, on the other hand, was different. My mind worked in numbers and patterns, which is why I became a forensic accountant. For years, I used my skills to protect the family firm. But 6 months ago, I found something that couldn't be protected, only exposed. I uncovered patterns of transactions, red flags that pointed to serious financial misconduct. When I brought my concerns to my father, his reaction was swift and brutal. "Some things are beyond your pay grade, Evelyn," he'd snapped, taking the files from me. "Your job is to protect this family, not question it." That confrontation was the beginning of the end. My access to key accounts was revoked. Jessica started leading meetings that were once mine. My questions were met with a wall of silence. The pressure to conform, to stay quiet, was suffocating. My father saw the firm not just as a business, but as a monument to himself. It was his legacy, and he believed any action was justified to protect it. Questioning the firm was like questioning his very existence, a betrayal he could not forgive. It didn't matter that I was his daughter. In his world, loyalty to the legacy was everything, and I had failed the test. The heavy oak door shut with a deafening finality, leaving me alone on the cold steps. The drive away from my family home was a blur. The hurt I felt at the door, sharp and numbing, slowly began to curdle into a cold, clarifying anger. My family hadn't just forgotten to invite me. They had orchestrated a public execution of my place in their lives. The presence of Megan, my best friend since college, sitting in my chair wasn't an accident. It was a message. She had known. She had watched them plan my exile and had said nothing. Uncle Christopher, who had always pretended to be my ally, was there too, laughing along as if nothing was wrong. The coordinated cruelty of it all took my breath away. They had made their choice. And now, I had to make mine. I found myself pulling over by the river, the city lights shimmering on the dark water. As I stared out, a memory surfaced of my friend Matthew, a prosecutor I knew from a university alumni group who now worked in the Department of Justice's Financial Crimes Division. We had met for coffee a few months ago, after my father first shut me down. "Something feels wrong at the firm," I'd confessed, trusting him. "I can't prove it, but my gut is screaming." He had listened intently. "If you ever find anything concrete," he had said, his expression serious, "you have a responsibility that goes beyond your family. Some things are bigger than a name on a building." He knew the impossible position I was in. To be a whistleblower is to choose a lonely path. It means sacrificing your past, your relationships, And your security for a principal? It's not an act of revenge, it's an act of profound, and often painful, ethical conviction. You accept that you will become the villain in your own family's story, the one who destroyed everything. You have to be willing to burn down your own life to do what's right, knowing you might not be celebrated, but condemned. Sitting there in my car, the humiliation of that closed door, fresh in my mind. His words echoed. I reached for my phone. His number already there. My thumb hovered over the call button. This was it. The point of no return. One call, and the Prescott empire would begin to crumble. The life I knew would be over. I thought of my father's face. Cold and unforgiving. They had left me with nothing. But they had forgotten one thing. They had left me with the truth. I pressed the button. Matthew answered on the second ring. Evelyn, is everything okay? His voice was calm. Not really, I replied, my own voice surprisingly steady. Remember that conversation we had? It's time. I have the files. Back in my apartment? The quiet felt like the calm before a storm. I had just sent Matthew the initial batch of encrypted files. And for a few minutes, nothing happened. Then, my phone lit up. It was a text from my father. 3 words. What have you done? Before I could even register it, my phone began to explode. A call from my mother, which I ignored. It went to voicemail. She called again. And again. Texts from my sister, Jessica, started flooding in. Each one more frantic than the last. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Call me now. Then came a message from Megan. Evelyn, this is a huge misunderstanding. We need to talk. The audacity of it, the sheer hypocrisy, made me sick. I silenced my phone. But the notifications kept lighting up the screen. A digital storm of panic and rage. Then, a different kind of notification appeared. A news alert from a major financial publication. Trading halted for Prescott Capital, pending federal inquiry. It was real. It was happening. A cold wave of validation washed over me. Their panic wasn't just anger. It was fear. They were guilty. And they knew it. Fueled by this certainty, I turned to my computer and opened the rest of the encrypted files. The ones I hadn't even had the courage to fully examine myself. What I found was worse than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just a matter of bending the rules or creative accounting. This was a massive, predatory fraud. The documents laid out a scheme that had siphoned over $90 million from a pension fund. My family was stealing from teachers, from firefighters, people who had trusted their entire futures to Prescott Capital. I traced the movement of the money through a web of offshore accounts and shell corporations. A complex system designed to be untraceable. And as I dug deeper, I found the final, devastating proof of my best friend's betrayal. There, in a series of transaction authorizations, was Megan's digital signature. She wasn't just a passive observer. She was an active participant. She had been helping them steal, helping them cover it up, all while she sat across from me at cafes, listening to my fears and pretending to be my friend. The full scope of their crime was horrifying. A monument not to success, but to pure, unadulterated greed. And I had just lit the fuse to bring it all crashing down. The insistent buzz of my apartment's intercom shattered the silence. I knew who it was. The digital storm had become a physical one. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. My father, my mother, my sister, and Megan. The whole family, minus one, stood in the hallway. Their faces, a mixture of fury and desperation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. What do you think you're doing? Kevin roared, stepping inside without being invited. You are destroying this family. My mother, Kimberly, followed, her eyes scanning my small apartment with distaste. This is a private matter. Evelyn, you have to call them back. Tell them you made a mistake. Jessica and Megan trailed behind, looking like cornered animals. It's too late for that, I said calmly, closing the door behind them. The truth doesn't work that way. My father paced my living room like a caged lion. The truth. You know nothing about the truth of running a business like ours. The pressures, the demands. Just as the argument was escalating, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my Uncle Christopher. He had a look of deep concern on his face. I came as soon as I heard, he said, stepping inside and putting a calming hand on my father's shoulder. Kevin, shouting, won't solve anything. We need to handle this with care. He turned to me, his voice full of feigned sympathy. Evelyn, your father is right. You don't understand the complexities. For instance, the transfers to the Caspian Fund were necessary for liquidity. He was trying to mediate, to play the role of the reasonable one, but he had made a fatal mistake. The Caspian Fund. It was a name I had seen only once, buried deep in a corrupted file I hadn't been able to open. It was a name he should never have known. While he continued to talk, trying to smooth things over, my fingers flew across my laptop keyboard. I navigated back to the corrupted file, his words echoing in my mind. Caspian. I typed it into the password field. The file unlocked. On the screen, a new set of documents appeared. They weren't transaction records or doctored statements. They were planning documents, blueprints, a detailed, step-by-step guide to the entire $90 million fraud, complete with contingency plans and exit strategies. At the top of the first page, under the title Author, was a single name, Christopher Prescott. He hadn't been a bystander. He wasn't a mediator. He was the architect, the serpent who had been whispering in my father's ear all along, masterminding his ruin. The power in the room didn't just shift, it shattered. I didn't say a word. I simply turned my laptop screen toward them. The color drained from Christopher's face. He lunged for the computer, but I pulled it back. My father squinted at the screen, his brow furrowed in confusion. He read the title. He read the author's name, his own brother. A choked sound escaped his throat, and his legs gave out. He collapsed onto my sofa, his face a mask of utter devastation. Chris, he whispered, his voice trembling. What is this? Kimberly let out a horrified gasp, her perfectly composed facade crumbling into dust. She stared at Christopher, her brother-in-law, the man who had sat at her table for 30 years, with a look of pure hatred. You did this, she hissed. You did this to us. The family imploded. Jessica started screaming at Christopher, calling him a snake, a parasite who had used them. Accusations flew across the room, a torrent of rage and betrayal that had been simmering under the surface for years. My father just sat there, broken, staring into space as he realized the man who had orchestrated his downfall was his own flesh and blood. Megan tried to slip away, but I blocked her path. You knew, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You knew he was behind it all. She couldn't meet my eyes. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face, defeated and utterly broken. My father looked at me, his eyes pleading. It was his last disparity move. Evelyn, he rasped. Name your price. Tell me what you want. $1 million. $5 million. We can give you anything to make this go away. He still believed everything, and everyone, could be bought. I looked at the man who had raised me, the man who had disowned me, now offering me a bribe to save the monster who had destroyed him. A cold, hard certainty settled in my heart. I had all the power now. There is no price, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. There is no deal. It's over. I picked up my phone. You have two options. You can call your lawyers and tell them everything. Or I can call Matthew and have him send a team here right now. I held his gaze, unblinking. You will not control this anymore. I will. 1 year later, the scent of roasting turkey filled my own home. I stood in my kitchen, arranging flowers on a dining table, set for 8. It was Thanksgiving again. But this year, everything was different. The past 12 months had been a whirlwind of legal battles and personal reckonings. Prescott Capital was gone, dismantled by the courts. Its assets were liquidated to repay every last dollar to the teachers and firefighters whose pensions had been stolen. Christopher was in prison, serving a lengthy sentence for fraud and conspiracy. My father, having cooperated fully against his brother, avoided jail time, but lost everything else. He and my mother now lived in quiet seclusion, their social empire reduced to ashes. My sister, Jessica, had moved away to start over, and we were slowly, cautiously, rebuilding a relationship based on honesty instead of obligation. As for Megan, I never spoke to her again. Some betrayals are too deep to ever be repaired. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my cousin Madison, the one family member who had stood by me from the beginning. She came in with a warm hug, followed by my friend Matthew. The rest of my guests soon arrived. It was a strange and wonderful collection of people, my chosen family. There were two of the firefighters I had helped save, their laughter now filling my home. There was Madison, my steadfast cousin,